All right, so we're ready to go. Thanks everyone for being here. We got a few things to go over. First, October really flew by. We have November right around the corner. Just a reminder that we have an election next week, the first week or the first Tuesday of November, and we will have free bus rides for everyone on that day to get to and from the polls. So just like we mentioned last week, this week again, we do have free bus rides for folks who are going to and from the polls. You do not have to have any documentation that you voted or are voting. We're not going to ask those questions, but we do want to encourage people to utilize the bus route so that they can get to the polls. So we're going to go over the Kansas Reads to Preschoolers. Each November, the Wichita Public Library partners with the State Library of Kansas and joins libraries throughout the state of Kansas for Kansas Reads to Preschoolers. It's a program that helps create young readers through early learning activities and sharing a common book. The program promotes reading to children from birth to ages 5. This year, the book is Grumpy Bird by Jeremy Tankard, and the book explores different emotions from the perspective of a bird who wakes up on the wrong side of the nest and is too grumpy for his own good. At 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, November 6th, at the Rockwell Branch Library, there will be a special outdoor story time featuring a reading of this book and other activities. So please bring a blanket or a lawn chair. Copies of the book will be available while supplies last. So if you like more activities to complete at home, you can visit the wichitalibrary.org/pre-K for links for online activities and recorded story times featuring your favorite books or your favorite librarians who will be reading those books. Halloween's coming up right around the corner, so Sunday is, of course, our Halloween. I want to thank everyone, or wish everyone a happy Halloween, especially to the kids who might not have been able to go trick-or-treating last year, like my kids. Also, for the parents, make sure that you are not blocking exits or fire lanes in case of emergencies. Be sure to continue social distancing, especially if going into crowded areas such as College Hill. The pandemic is still going on, and we want to make sure that everyone is staying as safe as possible. Always just a reminder to accompany kids on their trick-or-treating. Never let them go alone, and try to only go to the houses in which there is a porch light on. So please make sure to carry a flashlight, inspect your candy before diving in. If you need any help inspecting your Halloween treats, I'm happy to help taste test. Thanks, Megan, for throwing that line in. Which now we might have a bunch of people showing up at the office dropping off candy, which is not a good play, Megan. Now I'd like to welcome up our friends from the Women's United organization as we get into our next announcement here. Well, the City of Wichita and Women, or United We, have a collaborative partnership to increase the number of women on local boards and commissions throughout the appointment process. We want to bring more voices to the table when it comes to our advisory boards. So started in 2014, United We's appointments project has successfully placed more than 160 women on boards and commissions, with women of color representing 34% of applicants. So here to tell us more about this is our friend Holly from the 1861 Consulting on behalf of United We. So with that, Holly.
Thank you, Mayor Whipple, for your leadership, service, and including me today on behalf of United We. United We works to advance all women's economic and civic leadership. And to advance civic leadership, the Appointments Project was created, which is what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. The project serves as a talent bank, an advisor, an advocate for women seeking opportunities in local leadership positions. It also serves as a resource to elected officials. The Appointments Project is a data-driven resource and it's a proven solution to increase gender diversity on public boards and commissions. It will guide women through the process, and it provides tools they need to obtain successful appointments. Achieving gender equity in public service won't just benefit women. It'll benefit everyone in Wichita, which is why I'm excited to announce to you guys today that in partnership with the City of Wichita, United We is hosting a free virtual webinar on the Appointments Project November 10th at 12 p.m. The webinar will allow women to learn about Wichita leadership opportunities and provide information about the application process. To learn more and to RSVP, you can go to their website at united/we.org. And before I close, I want to give a special thank you to our local community partners, Wichita Urban Professionals, The Hive, Wichita Greater Partnership, and Wichita Chamber of Commerce. And thank you again, Mayor Whipple. And I'd like to thank the City Council and the Wichita City Manager, Bob Layton, for sharing United We's vision to increase gender diversity on boards and commissions. We are thrilled to partner with you all on the appointments project.
Thank you, Holly. And I just want to, again, just thank the United We for always being available and for reaching out to our office and helping us when it comes to policy and different procedures that we could be utilizing to increase diversity for our boards. You guys have just been a tremendous help and a wealth of knowledge, so thank you so much for all your help as well. So with that, we're going to get into a very last but very important announcement about a dog judging competition. So I'm going to just read the notes as Megan has provided them. So finally, I'd like to invite all pet owners to join me on Saturday, October 30th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Town West Square near Dick's Sporting Goods to the Wichita Animal Action League's second annual Halloween Festival. Falling solidly under the, quote, other mayoral duties as assigned, I will be judging the dog costume contest at 12:30. It should be a positive way to support the area animals and to get them out of a rough situation. Thanks, Megan. So with that, we'll now take questions about anything.
I'm pretty sure you read the paper.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on the issues raised about the city council and the grant application with inaccurate information in it?
Frankly, I'm a little disappointed in this story. I think that it's obvious, although you have to dig into it, that Councilmember Johnson did not receive any monetary type gifts, and thus our staff has reported or advised him that there was no conflict. And Councilmember Johnson has, frankly, created, not in his own behavior, but almost a trend of excusing himself from votes that could even be portrayed as a conflict of interest. So I think when I read the story critically, it frankly, it seems like you can make an argument that the legal advice was what Johnson was following. You can make the argument that might have been not great advice. However, you're putting pictures of African Americans all over the graphic that they're using. When the people behind the scene who were given advice, those pictures aren't on there. Usually white people are privileged. I know that my quotes towards the end I thought was taken out of tone. My quotes were not to throw anyone under the bus. It was more, why would you single out our African American representative here on the council, someone who, the only person of color on the council, who is trying to really respond to disparities in healthcare in the African American community, when you haven't, I guess, done any type of research on these other similar situations that we've seen throughout the years. So I read the story, I get it. I feel there's a little bit more of a racial undertone that concerns me when it comes to the story. And again, Vice Mayor Johnson, there is no evidence at all that he's getting any type of personal kickbacks at all for supporting an organization or not even an organization, a project to directly help with health inequities over in our African American community.
What about the use of inaccurate information within the grant application itself? Doesn't the city have a responsibility to make sure the information it puts in grant applications is accurate and up to date?
So my understanding, and I read this story this morning, I haven't had a chance to talk to staff, is what is your definition of inaccurate? My understanding is the data that was used.
Misrepresented might be a better term.
Maybe, so the data used was accurate data. It was just how it was used that is into question. However, the title is that it was misused, or that there was, which again, that puts the blame on the staff. That puts the blame on the federal government, who also goes through this stuff. Which again, none of those people's pictures are plastered all over the Eagles website. Instead, they put pictures of African American activists on those who aren't responsible for staff's role. And my understanding is the data actually that was presented was real data for Kansas. And you can make the argument, should it have been data more specific to Sedgwick County? Sure, let's make that argument, but that's not what was being presented in that story. It was misleading at best. It was saying that the data was almost, it implied that there was a malicious intent behind that, where it wasn't. So I think that, I don't believe that it was malicious at all. So even if you want to make the argument that they should have used a different data, then cool, write that and say that, instead of assuming that there was something more going on. And I will say, and I understand that there's not a lot of folks who get into the African American community unless you're a part of that community. But there is, and I think that over the Eagle, I'm not sure how often their reporters are able to get into spaces in which they might normally not be in. But there is a disparity. There is health disparities there. The governor showed this. Came down and highlighted this. I believe Cake News had a story on the Black Nurses Association getting into churches because there's a disparity when it comes to vaccination. There's a disparity when it comes to information getting out into these communities, and there's a history there in which many of these communities have been taken advantage of in the past when it comes to how we utilize medicine. So are we really going to cherry pick how this number was used, or how this is being applied? Or we're going to recognize the underlying fact that economics and historical inequities, particularly within communities of color, disproportionately affects those communities in a time of a crisis such as this pandemic?
So the main allegation in that article was that the city misled the federal government with that data. Do you know who in the city reviewed this data or reviewed that application before it was submitted?
So yeah, that's the other, because that's what I picked up as well. If you want to make a real argument that there might have been mismanagement of the presentation, you would have to go towards, okay, who combed through this application? We have full-time staff. We have full-time legal staff. We have, in the elected officials, the way our government is set up here, we cannot tell staff to do this or that. There's a firewall up that's purposeful in order to make sure that electeds aren't influencing contracts. So by the time it gets to the bench, at that point, we have to trust that the staff has reviewed this, because we ourselves are not afforded staff that look out for our best interests. The staff instead look out for the city as a whole, and they report to the manager, not to the electeds. So that's a question I think that it's worth looking into. However, again, that's different than accusing the vice mayor of utilizing his influence, which is implied in this article, to push put this application forward. So I think it's a very good question for staff. But again, I do want to just highlight the fact that the way our government is set up here at the local level, it is staff who negotiates all that. And frankly, you want that. You want elected officials to not be in there negotiating contracts, because you want to avoid situations in which it looks like you're playing favorites. And that's why everything that makes it to the bench has to go through a rigorous process with our professional staff who we, through city code, cannot influence those staff. We cannot go and, I guess, say, hey, look at this one over that one. We have no leverage when it comes to how we treat staff.
So who reviewed that data for submission? Is that a question that the city is going to be looking into?
So I believe it would have been Dante Martin, who I believe was overseeing that project, according to the Eagle, and this kind of falls under his purview as well. That would be my guess. I mean, if I was a reporter, I'd go ask Dante. And Dante Martin, he's the assistant city manager. He has a law degree, and he has, I think, if not one, two master's degrees that are relevant. He's very smart. He's someone who I think would be the right person to oversee something like this. Excuse me. So, good question though. But again, I do want to highlight we're not in the back writing up contracts. That's a violation of our current form of government. We're the ones who are supposed to take ideas and problems and concerns, such as disparities in communities of color when it comes to access to accurate health information, and when it comes to access to quality health care. We take that concern and we bring it to staff and say, how can we have a policy fix to this? And that's what I believe was going on here, was how do we have a policy fix to the fact that our African American community, regardless of what data set you want to look like, is disproportionately affected by COVID. And that's not just here in Wichita, that's nationally.
And the Facts Not Fear campaign, if you would, what have they done to address some of those health disparities?
So my understanding is the proposal is currently for what they're doing with the city. They are still playing out their plan at this point. So I'm not sure what the progress is at this current situation. I do know that the same folks did the Facts Not Fear campaign with the county government and utilized some funds with the county as well to be able, with the Council of Elders, with some of these other folks who are leaders within the African American community here in Wichita, to get out some of that information. And they did a very good informational campaign. So I haven't seen exactly if this campaign is going to be much different than the last one, but I do know that one of the reasons why you want to go and utilize locally known professionals within our community here is because of that trust factor. It's what we call social equity, right? So it's the Black Nurses Association working in the churches because people are comfortable in the churches. They trust the pastor. It's getting into the community and actually having accurate information delivered by people who are trustworthy within that community. That's how we are able to address some of these disparities instead of, I guess, media bombing it, right? Like, this is why this approach, utilizing community leaders and professionals within one community is much better than us just going on the radio or just throwing mail everywhere. We actually saw quite a bit during the last pandemic, or the last year in the pandemic, a lot of advertising being spent and not reaching throughout the country and not reaching some of these communities who are affected or hit the hardest with it, because this isn't marketing. It's deeper than that. So we want to make sure that we're utilizing the best strategies moving forward so that we can ensure communities throughout Wichita are as healthy as possible.
So how does all of this fit in with the push that you've made since coming to office for a new ethics code for the city?
So, first of all, I'm not perfect as mayor. Our council isn't perfect. We need to be held accountable when it comes to any type of ethical, if it's not a violation, anything that could look unethical, because it affects how we're perceived. So with that, we're not above criticism. We want pushback. We want criticism when it comes to ways that we could be handling things better. I will say when it comes to our ethics policy, it takes all of us to actually make that work, which means we don't have everyone who's appointed to the board. We don't have a full board yet. So I need my council to actually appoint the people so that we can have a full board. Also, Jeff Bluebog, who is the one who took a picture of his screen to try to gin up some type of political hit piece like what we are seeing today, if you look at his screen that he took a picture of and you timestamp it, he took that right before he voted yes on this, which means that we actually need people on the bench, particularly if you have an ethical question to the point where you're taking pictures, you're sending it off to right-wing radio hosts so that you can get a buzz out of this, and hopefully that the Eagle will do what they do with it. If you're going to do that, you also need to stop and ask questions. Your job on the bench is to say, hey, I'm looking at this website right now, and I'm wondering if you could explain your wife's involvement on this website. He didn't do that. We need people to bring that up, because at that point, then a lot of this could have been addressed. Right there, Johnson could have excused himself from the vote if he needed to at that point. And frankly, we need everyone on board when it comes to working together to create as ethical a process as possible. And we didn't see that this time around. We saw someone who not only took a timestamp picture to leak out in order to get a hit piece, but then didn't bring it up and then voted yes. Like, didn't even vote no against it. So, I think that when it comes to our policy, we need to be policy-minded elected officials at the bench and not politicians. And then once you're off the bench and you're not doing people's work, go take jabs at each other. I don't care. But when it comes to being at the bench, if you have something that comes up that is literally on your screen to the point where you snap a picture of it to go leak it somewhere, ask a question about it. Give your colleague the courtesy to respond to it, or file a complaint with the ethics board so that this stuff isn't, litigated in the media, so that you're on equal ground. Because that was the whole point, was allowing a nonpartisan due process to get through, any type of concerns we might have. Anything about the dog show?
Do you have a favorite dog?
Megan's dog. That's the right answer if I want funny jokes to keep winding up in this thing. All right, but if there's nothing else, I'm always available. Again, thank you all for coming, and shoot me a email or a text or a call if there's any information or anything that comes up during the week that you'd like to comment on. Thank you all.